The Shiv Sena under Eknath Shinde held its first national executive meeting on Tuesday. This is the first meeting that's held after the Election Commission handed over the name and the election symbol to Eknath Shinde's faction. That is a Shiv Sena. It also came on a day that the Lok Sabha Secretariat handed over Shiv Sena's office to Eknath Shinde. This has also come a day after MLAs of Eknath Shinde went and took charge of the Shiv Sena office in Vidhan Bhavan in Maharashtra. Now, there were some decisions taken at the National Executive, the chief and the most important decision being all the powers to make all decisions have now been vested with Eknath Shinde. What this National Executive did not decide, however, is what happens to the name and who becomes the president of this party. Now, if you remember, earlier in January, the term of Uddhav Thackeray in Shiv Sena ended in January. They actually wanted to hold another election as far as the presidentship is concerned, but at that time, because of the tussle between the name and the election symbol, the Uddhav Thackeray faction had approached the Election Commission saying, allow us to hold interim polls. But the Election Commission had decided against it, and that's why the post of the president, there was no decision taken on that, there was no election held on that. Now that this is Eknath Shinde's Shiv Sena, he has also clarified that he's not going to go after all the properties of the Shiv Sena, all the funds, all the bank accounts. And that was a very real fear for the other faction of the Shiv Sena because one by one, offices of the Shiv Sena were being taken over by Eknath Shinde's faction. Now, today, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the challenge of Uddhav Thackeray's faction to the Election Commission's decision. And the Election Commission decision will play a key role in deciding the future course of events and actions, particularly with what happens with the Shiv Sena, the name, the election symbol, and how things go forward. Now, it does seem like the Election Commission has relied entirely on the strength of the elected members, and that's been the major factor in deciding who gets the name and who gets the election symbol. Now, how did this test of majority get decided? The Election Commission in its order simply relied on the test of majority, assessing which faction had more number of MPs and MLAs, and that's how it staked claim to the Shiv Sena's name and the bow and arrow symbol. Now, this faction, of course, was Eknath Shinde's faction. They have more MPs with them, they have more MLAs with them. Now, the Election Commission in its order has cited the Sadiq Ali case. And this is an important case because it relates to Prime Minister or former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Now, Indira Gandhi had triggered a split in the Congress in 1969. The Election Commission had ultimately used the test of majority in that case and a principle introduced in the Symbols Order of 1968 to decide the Congress O versus Congress J fight. The matter, which came to be known as the Sadiq Ali case, went to the Supreme Court, which upheld the Election Commission's decision in 1971. Now, there are other criteria also, such as the test of party constitution, the test of aims and objects too. But in this case, that is the Sena versus Sena case, much like the Congress split that was decided about 5 decades ago by the Election Commission, the other two test cases were dismissed. And if you remember, Uddhav Thackeray made a mention of this, that for 6 months, the Election Commission had been asking us for affidavits, submitting various papers, giving us a list of how many members they have, each member's affidavit, district level leaders, Shakha Pramukhs. And then he also called this exercise an exercise in futility because according to him, the Election Commission did not go with any of that affidavits that they had actually submitted. Now, both sides claims adherence to the aims and objects. So, the Election Commission found that it could not rely entirely on this criteria for coming to a final decision on who should get the party name and symbol. Also, what was held unconstitutional and undemocratic by the Election Commission was a decision taken in 2018 by the Shiv Sena, where Uddhav Thackeray was given the ultimate powers. So, even when he had to decide to become the president, he would have the veto power on it also. And that's something the Election Commission in its order has said that it violated the Representation of People Act of 1951. Now, how does this play out in court? That's something everyone will be watching, because for the Shiv Sena, the new and the old, Eknath Shinde's faction as well as the Uddhav Thackeray faction, the bow and arrow, the symbol that Barasaheb Thackeray had given, that has already slipped away from Uddhav Thackeray. But will a challenge in court help him restore it, even as Eknath Shinde continues being in power and going ahead with decisions?